The rope marks on my daughter's wrists were still visible when I dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Never in my worst nightmares did I imagine that moving to a picture perfect neighborhood would lead to this moment. My 8-year-old tied to a tree by our HOA president's son, while she watched and smiled. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you how a simple chalk drawing turned into the most terrifying day of our lives, and how one phone call brought an entire neighborhood's dark secrets crashing down. The morning sun filtered through the oak trees lining Meadowbrook Lane, casting dappled shadows across perfect manicured lawns. Sarah Mitchell stood at her kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, watching her 8-year-old daughter Emma draw chalk flowers on their driveway. Everything about Pinehurst Estates screamed perfection, from the uniform, cream-colored mailboxes to the precisely trimmed hedges that separated each property. Sarah had moved here 6 months ago after her divorce, desperate for a fresh start. The neighborhood seemed ideal: quiet streets, good schools, and friendly faces. Or so she thought. "Mom, can I ride my bike to the park?" Emma called out, her blonde pigtails bouncing as she ran towards the front door. "Stay where I can see you, sweetheart," Sarah replied, smiling at her daughter's endless energy. What Sarah didn't notice was the woman watching from across the street. Linda Hartwell, the HOA president, stood behind her living room curtains, clipboard in hand, documenting what she perceived as yet another violation: the chalk on the driveway. The garden genome Emma had placed near the flower bed, the welcome mat that was 2 inches beyond regulation specifications. Linda's lips pressed into a thin line. Unacceptable, she muttered, scribbling notes furiously. The letter arrived 3 days later, printed an official HOA letterhead with Linda's swooping signature at the bottom: "Notice of Violation." It read in bold letters. Sarah's hands trembled as she scanned the document. Apparently, her mailbox flag was the wrong shade of red. Her trash bins had been visible from the street for 17 minutes past the allowed time, and the chalk drawings constituted defacement of community property. The fines totaled $450. "This is insane," Sarah whispered, reading it again to make sure she wasn't hallucinating. She'd heard stories about aggressive HOAs, but this felt personal. That evening, she knocked on Linda's door, hoping to resolve things civilly. Linda answered wearing a pearl necklace and a condescending smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Mrs. Mitchell, how can I help you?" "I received this letter," Sarah began, holding up the notice. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Emma's just a child drawing with chalk. It washes away with rain." "Rules are rules," Linda interrupted, her voice saccharine sweet. "We can't have the neighborhood looking like a daycare center. Property values, you understand? But $450 for chalk and a trash bin, this seems excessive." Linda's smile vanished. "Perhaps you should have researched our community standards before moving here. The covenant is quite clear: pay the fine by Friday or it doubles." She closed the door before Sarah could respond. Sarah stood there, stunned and furious. Behind Linda's door she could hear a younger voice, Linda's 12-year-old son, Tyler. "Mom, that was harsh," he said. "Mind your business, Tyler. I'm protecting our investment." Over the next month, the harassment intensified. Sarah received citations for her car being parked 3 inches over her driveway line, for a dandelion growing in her lawn, even for Emma's laughter being disruptive during quiet hours, which Linda had apparently established without a community vote. Sarah tried appealing to other neighbors, but most were terrified of Linda. The few who sympathized did so in whispers, sharing stories of their own battles with the HOA president. "She drove the Johnsons out last year," elderly Mrs. Shen confided over her fence. "Fined them into bankruptcy over a fence height dispute. Nobody crosses Linda Hartwell." But Sarah refused to be bullied. She documented everything, started attending HOA meetings, and discovered that Linda had been embezzling community funds and investing inventing violations to cover her tracks. Sarah quietly gathered evidence, planning to present it at the next board meeting. Linda somehow find out. It happened on a Tuesday afternoon. Emma was playing in their backyard, building a fairy house from twigs and leaves. Sarah was inside, organizing her evidence against Linda, when she heard Emma scream. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She sprinted outside, her heart hammering against her ribs. What she saw made her knees nearly buckle. Emma was tied to their oak tree with jump ropes, tears streaming down her face. Tyler Hartwell stood nearby, arms crossed, wearing an expression that was equal parts smugness and uncertainty. "What have you done?" Sarah shrieked, rushing to her daughter. Her hands shook as she frantically worked at the knots. "She was trespassing," Tyler said defensively. "She crossed into our yard to get her ball. Mom says trespassers need to learn respect." "She's 80 years old." Sarah's voice cracked as she finally freed Emma, who collapsed into her arms sobbing. Sarah's phone was already in her hand, dialing 911, when Linda appeared at the fence line. "Oh, don't be so dramatic," Linda said dismissively. "Tyler was just teaching her about boundaries. Maybe if you had disciplined her properly, she wouldn't need others to do it for you." "You told your son to tie up my daughter?" "I said handle it." Tyler showed initiative. Linda's tone was bored, as if they were discussing the weather. Sarah's vision blurred with rage. "The police are on their way, and when they're done, I'm calling my lawyer, the news, and anyone else who'll listen." For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Linda's face. "You're overreacting. I'll have my husband deal with this nonsense when he gets home." "Your husband?" Sarah's laugh was bitter. "Call him, please. I'd love to speak with him about what kind of woman raises her son to assault children." Linda's confidence crumbled. "You don't understand who you're dealing with." "Neither do you," Sarah shot back, holding Emma close. "My ex-husband might have been useless, but I'm not helpless. I've got documentation of every illegal thing you have done. The embezzlement, the fraudulent fines, the harassment. I was going to handle this properly through legal channels, but you just crossed a line you can't uncross." Tyler's face had gone pale. "Mom, she's serious. Maybe we should apologize and—" "Be quiet, Tyler. Get in the house now." The police arrived within 10 minutes. Officers Martinez and Chen took statements while Emma clung to Sarah, still shaking. They photographed the rope marks on Emma's wrist, documented Tyler's admission, and the smug expression finally melted from Linda's face. "This is assault," Officer Martinez said grimly. "On a minor, that's a serious charge." Linda's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. "It was just. He didn't mean any real harm. You can't possibly think—" "Ma'am, your son, apparently at your direction, physically restrained another child against her will. In the state of California, that constitutes assault and child endangerment. Do you understand the severity of this situation?" "I want to call my husband," Linda whispered, her earlier arrogance evaporating like morning dew. "You can call him from the station," Officer Chen replied, pulling out handcuffs. "You have the right to remain silent." Sarah watched as Linda was read her Miranda rights, the woman's face turning ash gray. Tyler stood in their doorway, crying, suddenly looking like the scared child he actually was beneath her mother's poisonous influence. The next 48 hours were a whirlwind. Linda was arrested for child endangerment and conspiracy to commit assault. Tyler was placed with his father, who, it turned out, had been documenting Linda's increasingly erratic behavior for months, planning his own exit. But the real shock came when Linda's husband, Robert, arrived at Sarah's door the next evening. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said quietly, looking exhausted and years older than he probably was, "I owe you an apology. Several, actually." Sarah stood in her doorway, Emma peeking from behind her legs. "I'm listening." "I'm a family court mediator. The irony isn't lost on me. I watched Linda's obsession with control destroy our marriage, alienate our son, and terrorize this neighborhood for 3 years. I was gathering evidence for divorce proceedings, but I should have acted sooner. Your daughter paid the price for my hesitations, and I'm deeply, deeply sorry." Sarah's anger softened slightly at the genuine remorse in his eyes. "Your son needs help, professional help. He's getting it. Therapy starts tomorrow, and I'm pressing charges against Linda myself. She's been psychologically manipulating Tyler for years, using him as a weapon against neighbors she deemed unworthy." Robert handed Sarah an envelope. "This is documentation of every fraudulent HOA fine she's issued in the past 3 years. Your lawyer will want it. There's also evidence of her embezzlement, over $73,000 stolen from community funds." Sarah's eyes widened. 73,000? She's been running this neighborhood like her personal kingdom, extracting money through fake violations and pocketing the difference. You weren't the first family she targeted, Mrs. Mitchell. You were just the first brave enough to fight back. The emergency HOA meeting 3 days later was standing room only. Neighbors who'd been silent for years suddenly found their voices. Mrs. Chen presented a petition signed by 40 households demanding Linda's immediate removal. The evidence of embezzlement was projected onto a screen for everyone to see. Falsified invoices, phantom repair bills, and a secret bank account in Linda's name. Linda sat in the back row, her lawyer whispering urgently in her ear, looking nothing like the imperious woman who ruled Pinehurst Estates with an iron fist. Sarah stood at the podium, Emma beside her holding her hand, and addressed the crowd. "I moved here 6 months ago looking for safety and community. Instead, I found a tyrant who used fear to control good people. My daughter was physically assaulted because I dared to stand up to bullying and corruption. But here's what I learned through this nightmare. Bullies only have power when we give it to them. The moment we stand together, they crumble." The room erupted in applause. They lasted nearly 2 minutes. The board voted unanimously to remove Linda from all HOA positions, dissolve every fraudulent fine issued in the past 3 years, and restructure the HOA with actual democratic oversight and financial transparency. Linda faced criminal charges for embezzlement, child endangerment, conspiracy to commit assault, and fraud. Her perfect facade had finally cracked completely. During the following weeks, more victims came forward. The Martinez family had been fined $8,000 for painting their door teal instead of the approved navy blue. The Johnsons had been forced to sell their home after accumulating $32,000 in bogus violations. The Patels had been cited for ethnic-looking odors that disturbed the neighborhood ambience. Every single case showed the same pattern. Linda identified families who she considered beneath Pinehurst State standards and systematically drove them out through financial harassment. The local news picked up the story. HOA president arrested after child assault became the headline that spread across social media. Sarah gave one interview focusing not on revenge but on the importance of communities standing up to abusive authority figures. Linda's lawyer tried negotiating a plea deal, but the district attorney wasn't interested. The evidence was overwhelming. The crime against a child too serious, and the pattern of financial fraud too extensive. 3 months later, Sarah watched Emma draw chalk masterpieces across their entire driveway, flowers, rainbows, and an elaborate dragon that stretched from the garage to the street. Other children had joined her, and the sound of laughter filled the air, the sound Linda had once tried to silence with quiet hour violations. The neighborhood had transformed completely. Mailboxes appeared in various colors, red, blue, yellow, even one painted like a ladybug. Garden genomes multiplied across lawns like cheerful little rebellions. Welcome mats of all sizes graced doorsteps. Pinehurst Estates became a community instead of a dictatorship. Mrs. Chen brought over homemade dumplings one evening. "Thank you for saving our neighborhood, dear. We should have been braver years ago." Sarah smiled, watching Emma play. "We saved each other. That's what real neighbors do." Tyler, now living full time with his father and attending twice weekly therapy sessions, had written Emma a heartfelt apology letter. Robert ensured the boy understood the gravity of what happened and took responsibility for his own enabling of Linda's behavior. The headline process was slow. but genuine. As for Linda, she's pleaded guilty to avoid a lengthy trial and faced 18 months in prison plus full restitution of the embezzled funds. The judge had been particularly harsh during sentencing, noting that Linda had betrayed the trust of an entire community and traumatized a child. You were given authority to serve your neighbors, the judge said sternly. Instead, you terrorized them. You turned what should have been a safe community into your personal fiefdom. Worst of all, you involved your own son in assault against a child. This court finds your actions reprehensible. Linda's last attempt at maintaining her dignity crumbled as the sentence was read. Sarah, sitting in the courtroom gallery, felt no satisfaction in the woman's tears. She felt only relief that Emma would never have to fear Linda Hartwell again. But standing in her driveway weeks later, surrounded by neighbors who'd become genuine friends, watching her daughter play freely without fear or restrictions, Sarah realized something important. She'd stopped waiting for perfection and built something better instead. Real community, real safety, real change. And that was worth every difficult, terrifying moment. Emma ran up, chalk dust on her nose and joy in her eyes. Mom, come draw with us. Mrs. Chen is teaching us how to draw pandas. Sarah knelt beside her daughter, picked up a piece of pine chalk, and drew a flower next to Emma's dragon. For the first time since moving to Pinehurst Estates, everything actually felt perfect. Not the manufactured, regulated, fearful perfection Linda has demanded, but the messy, colorful, loud, beautiful perfection of people living freely and caring for each other genuinely. The chalk drawing would wash away with the next rain, but the community they'd built together, that would last forever.